So now let's talk about the knowledge publishing workflow. In a typical workflow, as far as creating knowledge articles in Salesforce, the first step is creating a new article. So I have the knowledge sidebar here in the service console, and we added this previously and moved it into this position. And in your own instance, it may be all the way over to the right, but here, just for sake of finding it more easily, I decided to put it in the middle here. And the first step in creating a knowledge article is to create a new one. And I'm clicking the down arrow in the knowledge sidebar and selecting new article. Now for the type of article, previously these were known as article types. And with the advent of Lightning Knowledge, they've done away with, or they're in the process of doing away with article types in favor of just using record types on knowledge articles. And so we have our select a record type for this knowledge article selection, and that's either tutorial or a FAQ, frequently asked question. And so I'm going to select a FAQ for the record type and click next. And we've already looked at creating a knowledge article previously, and I'm going to do another one here. And I'm just going to call this one how to log out. So you tab over to fill in the URL name, and then you enter in the article details. And for this type of article, there's a section for question and a section for answer here. And so let's enter in the question. And then for the answer, I'm going to enter in the information for how to log out in this scenario. And once again, this is a WYSIWYG editor. So I'm going to click save. And so now my article has been created. Now you notice that it's in a publication status of draft. Now I've got the ability to publish articles, and there's a lot you can do in the publishing lifecycle or workflow as far as giving certain users the rights to just directly publish, or maybe they can just author but someone else has to publish the articles to make them live, for example. I'll show you here in a moment how that can be set and adjusted in the security settings through profiles and permission sets. But we've got our details tab here for the information on the title and URL name and the question, the answer, the related lists, which are none, and the versions, which we have just the one that I'm currently viewing, which is the draft version. In the typical knowledge publishing workflow, a lot of times you'll be iterating over these knowledge articles, and you may want to do additional things like make further edits. I went in here and made an edit, for example, and just added another line and click save. Let me edit this again though, and show you some other options down here at the bottom. You can make these articles visible to customers or to partners, and this would be inside of a community, for example. You can even make this visible inside the public knowledge base as well. And I'm going to click save to save my changes. And then as well, you can assign this a data category by clicking the down arrow by the categories related list here and clicking edit. And we've got a few different data categories that we created previously, if you recall, and we got into the hierarchy of those, is the different sales regions and products as well. And so as you go through your publishing workflow of your knowledge articles, you'll want to be able to categorize these articles, for example. And so we're going to apply this to all sales regions and then click save. And so now I've added a category for this knowledge article as well. And there's other options here as far as this down arrow goes. In addition to the edit, delete, and publish options that I have available, would be to change the record type. And that's where we would change that from a FAQ to, in our instance, a tutorial. I'm going to cancel out of that and keep that as a FAQ. And I'm going to go ahead and publish this article as well. And then another thing you can do in the workflow and the publishing of articles is you can schedule the publication on a certain date or time. So for example, if you've got a new system coming out or an update to your software and you're writing all these knowledge articles related to it, you may not want to release those into the public until a future date, for example. So it's here that you could set a date and specify when to publish it, for example, and just click publish. And it has to be a time in the future that you can set that, and then just click publish. And so this is going to be published in the future here because I set that. You could click publish again and schedule that publication on a different date. I'm going to cancel out of that though and just publish this now so it's available right now to us. And we have another knowledge article. The knowledge article number is automatically created when you create the knowledge article. And we see now as we have published this that we're in version 1. And so now that we've published an article, another piece of the publishing workflow is that once an article is published, you can edit as draft a new version. And so it says, are you sure you want to create a draft of this article? The latest published version will still be available in the knowledge base. So we edit as draft. And so now we can make changes to our knowledge article, and just bearing in mind that knowledge articles are informational sort of assets that you provide to end users, and think of it like technical writing or documentation or online help. And this is Salesforce's way of enabling you to provide further guidance and help for users that's beyond just the online help. And a lot of times this is for like internal use, for like your support reps to be able to reference knowledge articles and help close cases, attach those articles to cases and stuff like that. And we attached a knowledge article to a case previously in a previous lecture. So now I've done with my edits, I'm going to click Save. And so now if we click the Versions tab, we see that we've got a draft version, and it is the one that we're currently viewing. And then we've got the version that's active and published, and that's version 1. So I'm going to click Publish on this draft that we're currently viewing. I'm going to select to publish it now and flag as new version. Now what that means is you can select this option to publish a new major version. The previous version is archived. That way you don't have duplicates of the same knowledge articles with just slight variations. You can deselect this option to save a minor change as the same version without archiving the previous one. So you've got an option there to either flag as a new version or not. I'm going to click Publish. And so now we've got version number 2. And so knowledge articles can be versioned. And so versioning is something that you may be asked about on the exam as it relates to knowledge articles, and that's how that's done. Now, I also mentioned previously that I wanted to get into some of the security settings that have to do with publishing workflow for knowledge. And so if I go into Setup, we want to hit on some of the profile settings. And this is going to be more just informational, just so that you're aware of what's possible with the knowledge publishing workflow. I'm not going to demonstrate all this. There could probably be a 4 to 5 hour in-depth course on just knowledge management in Salesforce. So if you'd be interested in seeing that in the future come from me, please let me know, and I'll consider creating a course around and a deep dive into just knowledge management in Salesforce. But for the meantime, for what you need to know and be aware of on the exam, we'll cover those pieces here for the Service Cloud Consultant exam. And so under my profile here, I'm in the System Administrator profile under App Permissions. This is where we can get into some of the knowledge-based settings at the profile level. And so there's several different places that these things can be set as far as extending knowledge use to users. One is on the user account. You can select that they're a knowledge user, and then at the profile level you have this knowledge management section here. And so if you notice, there's all these different permissions and descriptions around what these enable or not on based on if these are selected or not. You can't change this on the System Administrator profile, but on other profiles you can. This is a standard profile, so system administrators need the ability to view and archive articles. You know, we just archived one when we published a new version of that article just previously. And so this thing here called Knowledge One, that Knowledge and Knowledge One are nowadays kind of being used interchangeably. I envision that Salesforce is going to eventually abandon the term One and just call it Knowledge. And that has to do with predecessor to Knowledge was known as Salesforce Solutions, and there were things known as solution articles. And we're actually in a couple of lectures after this one, we're going to be talking about knowledge versus solutions. So there still may be some things on the exam related to solution articles. And so I want to make you aware of, you know, what preceded knowledge, which are solutions. And so if you enable Knowledge One, it replaces the Articles tab with the Knowledge tab in Salesforce. And so any newer developer orgs from this point going forward already have Knowledge One enabled, and so you don't really need to worry about this a whole lot in your instance. But I do feel like it would be good to talk about solutions later on in this section, because you also may encounter it not only on the exam still, but also if you're working on a project, you may run into solution articles. And solutions are free out of the box. Knowledge One is an upcharge. It's a feature license. And so some companies may want to just use solutions instead of knowledge. So it's a long explanation, but Knowledge One is probably just going to be called Knowledge in the future. Just think of them as one and the same, really. But Knowledge One just has to do with this transitionary time that we find ourselves in, where we're going from solutions to knowledge, and that being the favored flavor of the day with Salesforce until they come up with something new in a few years. But the main thing, or the main point here, is that you can extend permissions through profiles related to knowledge management. It's in this section here. and then also in permission sets. So I wanted to show you as well an interesting thing that I found as I was looking at the permission sets is that there's a permission set here in my org for knowledge LSF permission set. And so that came along automatically whenever I enabled Lightning in my org. I believe is where that was first instigated or came about. And so it says that it grants CRUD permission for knowledge as well as knowledge user permissions. Now CRUD is create, read, update, and delete. And so that's just an acronym that you'll run across sometimes if you hear about CRUD rights. And so I wanted to make you aware of that as well. And so what I wanted to show you is making you aware of this permission set that may or may not be in your own org. And if we look at app permissions in a permission set, remember permission sets are much like profiles. And so in this particular permission set that you could then assign to users, you can extend this knowledge management functionality further. And so you could extend or remove different rights related to knowledge and assign those rights to users by clicking manage assignments, for example. And so if we wanted to add an assignment for John Doe, and he actually already has that permission set. Let me look at his profile. So he's got the custom marketing profile, and yeah, I wanted to check to make sure he had the knowledge user checked. And so that, I believe, is what caused him to receive that permission set assignment. And so here you see that permission set assignment that occurred when I enabled knowledge and then added his user record as I assigned him the knowledge user checkbox. So the main thing to take away though is that you can extend knowledge use through several different ways or provide security and access. One is through this checkbox here called knowledge user on the user. It's also through the profile, which we looked at previously in the profile settings. And then as well, you can extend knowledge permissions through permission sets and assign users to those permission sets. And then once again, those different permissions that can be set are under app permissions. And then here's the different knowledge management functionality as far as allowing users to view articles, archive, and even edit and publish translations, replace articles tab with knowledge tab. And then this manage articles is where they can create, edit, assign, publish, delete, and archive Salesforce knowledge articles. And so finally, another thing related to article workflow is if we look under workflow rules, just one thing I want to make you aware of is as I go into the first steps of creating a new workflow rule is that you can select the knowledge object for a workflow rule. Now I'm not going to go into all this. We've gone on long enough on this topic, and I fear it's getting a little lengthy for this particular lecture. But I wanted to make you aware that you can hit the knowledge object now through workflow rules. And what this means is that you can automate processes hanging off of knowledge records as far as doing field updates, sending out email alerts. And you can even as well tie knowledge articles to approval processes. And so once the knowledge article is created, for example, you could have that be submitted for approval, and then an approver approve that knowledge article. And then once it's approved, then the author can click publish to publish the article. So there's a lot to keep in mind and bear in mind as it relates to knowledge publishing workflow. And so another final item that I wanted to recommend that you check out, this complete guide to Salesforce knowledge. This is a really helpful PDF that's available online, and I'll link to this in the resources section of this lecture. And it goes through the whole process of implementing knowledge. And so if you're tasked with implementing knowledge in a Salesforce org as a consultant, this will be a document that you'll want to take into account. This goes really in depth into knowledge management in Salesforce. And as you can see, it's well over 90 pages long. And as I mentioned previously, I could probably do a very extensive course related to just this topic. So we have covered all the major pieces related to the knowledge publishing workflow. And so now we're going to talk about knowledge data migration strategies in the next lecture.